cut short. On May 19th, rapper Camoflauge was gunned
It was the
down
worst.
in front of a Savannah studio.
Still to this day, probably the saddest day in Savannah.
Why do you think it's so much crime in Savannah?
Poverty, man.
Monday, May 19th, 2003, was a warm spring afternoon in Savannah, Georgia. That day, 21-year-old rapper Jason Camoflauge Johnson stepped outside what was once Purple Pain Records on 37th Street. The sky was clear, the streets were quiet. In his arms, he carried his 16-month-old son. Just a short trip to the car. But then, without warning, came the sound that would change everything. Gunfire. Multiple shots rang out in rapid succession. In the confusion, witnesses reported seeing a young man collapse to the pavement. The baby, miraculously, was unharmed. But Camoflauge was bleeding heavily. Paramedics rushed to the scene. The rapper, barely past his teenage years, and once thought to be Savannah's breakout star, was loaded into an ambulance and taken to Memorial Health University Medical Center. By evening, the news had spread. Camoflauge Johnson was deceased. For a city already reeling from a recent wave of retaliation, it was a chilling escalation. For the local music scene, it was unthinkable. For the people who knew him best, it was something worse. It was a warning. It was a signal. The kind of message that doesn't need to be spoken. But why would someone want him deceased? In Hitch Village, the housing projects where Camoflauge had grown up, the mood was electric with sadness. This was the loss of a hometown hero. Someone who had made it out, or was just about to. Someone who had represented their struggle, their stories, their truth. One reporter who covered the scene later recalled, "I remember the overwhelming sadness displayed by the people who lived and worked in the neighborhood where the shooting happened, where Camoflauge's studio was," she said. The fact that this local musical star was shot and hit in his very own town that helped form him was jarring to say the least. She also recalled his farewell service, saying it was absolutely packed. That was a mournful day for Savannah. People were scared because they'd seen this story before. In Savannah, retaliations didn't happen in isolation. And if Camoflauge's passing was part of a pattern, then more blood might be coming. But before the name Camoflauge made it onto CD covers and club flyers, before his songs were played on Southern radio stations, he was just Jason Akil Johnson, a skinny kid from the Hitchville Projects in Savannah, Georgia. Born on December 9th, 1981, Jason grew up surrounded by poverty, dope, and the sounds of sirens at night. But amid the chaos, there was something else too: rhythm. He started freestyling as a child, rapping for his cousins and neighbors on front porches and in corner stores. He called himself Camoflauge, intentionally misspelled so people wouldn't confuse him with the New Orleans rapper of a similar name. He wanted to rep Savannah, and the name fit. A kid blending into the streets, hiding in plain sight, but impossible to ignore once he spoke. By 2000, Camoflauge had gone solo. His debut, I Represent, sold more than 50,000 copies and caught the attention of Universal Music Group. A distribution deal through Uptown Records followed, a rare break for an independent artist from Savannah. But trouble followed too. As Camoflauge's star was rising, so was the scrutiny. In early 2001, Camoflauge was arrested on charges of dope possession. The charges were eventually dropped, but not before the damage was done. Universal Music Group, who had inked a distribution deal with him through Uptown Records, pulled out. Just like that, the deal was gone. But the real headline came later that year. In June 2001, Camoflauge and his friend, David Murdoch Rashawn Thompson, were arrested and charged with the hit of a man named Kenneth Boo Capers. Savannah police alleged the two were involved in a lethal shooting that had gang ties to Hitch Village, a claim that shocked many. Murdoch was a rising basketball star with a scholarship on the table. Camoflauge was one of the city's most promising musicians, and neither one, it seemed, fit the part. Both men denied the charges, and the community rallied behind them. There were no eyewitnesses. The evidence was thin. Eventually, a grand jury refused to indict either man. Still, Camoflauge spent nearly 3 months behind bars, awaiting resolution. During that time, he wrote much of the material that would later appear on his breakout album, Strictly for the Streets. A project deeply shaped by confinement, distrust of the system, and the paranoia of street life. But trouble didn't stop there. Shortly after his release, Camoflauge caught another dope charge, possession again. The case, like others, didn't go far, but by then, the pattern was clear. The courts weren't sure if he was a rapper wrapped up in street life or a street figure posing as a rapper. The uncertainty kept the big labels away. It also kept the police close.
You know, it's a lot of poverty, and that's why it's a lot of jacking, and that's why it's a lot of robberies and car thefts and all that, because the poverty that, you know what I'm saying, they ain't giving us nothing to get our head down here. So all these young cats out here who ain't never been to
high school and all they know is the streets, they struggle, you know, and when the drought come around, it's a lot of robberies, you know, and it's a lot of violence out here in these streets, man. So definitely it's the poverty, lack of everything.
Still, Camoflauge leaned into his independence. In interviews, he said he didn't want to fake an image or soften his message. He rapped what he lived, and if people couldn't handle that, they weren't meant for his music. But behind the defiance was a young man who couldn't fully escape the orbit of the streets or the attention of law enforcement. The first shot in Savannah's chain of retribution came just after nightfall on Friday, May 16th, 2003. Felix Scott was sitting in his pickup truck near the Fred Wessel's homes, a public housing complex on Savannah's east side, when gunmen opened fire. The ambush was sudden, precise. By the time first responders arrived, Felix was already gone. A well-known figure in Savannah's dope world, gunned down in the streets he once controlled. To many, Felix wasn't just another street hustler. He was a kingpin, a connector, a man who, whether through fear, loyalty, or both, held deep respect in the city's underworld. His passing sent a ripple of fear and fury across Savannah. But in the shadows, it was more than just shock. It was suspicion. Because the story that emerged wasn't just about who hit Felix. It was about who Felix saw coming. According to widespread street rumors, Felix had made a grim prediction. Before the meeting that night, he told family and close friends that he was going to see Jason Camoflauge Johnson, the rapper, the hometown star, and he was clear, if something happens to me, it was Flauge. That wasn't paranoia, it was preparation. Some versions of this story claim Felix even left behind a list of names, a chilling premonition scrawled out in case the night went sideways. And it did. Felix didn't survive the meeting, and within hours, the streets were boiling with whispers that Savannah's rising rap star had just pulled off the unthinkable, the setup and passing of a beloved local dope figure. And the motive? Robbery. Camoflauge and associate, Michael Grant, had allegedly plotted the move together. Whether out of desperation, retaliation, or ambition, the story went that they ambushed Felix, took what they wanted, and left his body behind. If that's true, they barely had time to enjoy the spoils. The shooting was ruthless and deliberate. Multiple rounds, center mass. Grant didn't make it far. He collapsed on the pavement, bleeding out just steps from where Felix had passed away hours earlier. The message was unmistakable. This was retaliation. Swift, unhesitating, and calculated. Michael Grant was a close associate of Camoflauge, a fellow Hitch Village native, and according to rumor, the man who had helped orchestrate Felix Scott's hit. The streets buzzed with the same chilling narrative, that Camoflauge and Grant had lured Felix into a meeting under false pretenses, then robbed and hit him. If true, Grant was the first to face consequences. In fact, many believe he never stood a chance. The timing was damning. Felix was hit late Friday night. Grant was deceased before sunrise Saturday. It was as if someone had been waiting, watching for confirmation. And once they had it, they acted. Police immediately suspected that Grant's passing was part of a chain reaction, a vendetta unfolding in real time. In fact, within days, Savannah authorities identified a 19-year-old suspect named Dorian Orr in connection with Grant's passing. Orr was from the same neighborhood as Felix and had known ties to Felix's circle. He fled Savannah shortly after the hit, prompting a manhunt across state lines. But on the street, no one was waiting for an indictment. Grant's body hadn't even cooled before the city braced for more, and the signs were everywhere. Closed blinds, hushed phone calls, and parents ushering children inside before dark. Savannah had seen these patterns before, and everyone knew what was coming next. The next bullet, the next body, the next name on the list. Michael Grant's passing didn't end everything, it ignited it. Camoflauge was said to have appeared on a local radio station, and what he said poured gasoline on the fire. He paid tribute to Grant on air, speaking as though the war wasn't over. "Mike, we gonna ride for you," he allegedly said. A declaration, a threat, a mistake. Less than 24 hours later, Camoflauge was deceased. By the time Jason Camoflauge Johnson's body hit the pavement outside Pure Pain Studio on May 19, 2003, Savannah had become a city on edge. In just 72 hours, 3 men, Felix Scott, Michael Grant, and Camoflauge, were gunned down in what seems to be connected, targeted hits. The streets knew it. The police knew it. But proving it, that was something else. Law enforcement scrambled to contain what many quite feared was a full-blown gang war. Publicly, they held back, calling it a string of violent incidents. Privately, they launched a special task force, a detective squad dedicated to unraveling what happened and who was responsible for each life that was taken. Eventually, Orr agreed to a plea deal, 10 years for voluntary manslaughter. Not a confession, but an admission that going back to trial might lead to worse. That was the only conviction to come from that blood-soaked week. But Camoflauge's legacy had long been cemented in Savannah. And in 2023, Camoflauge had been revived in a sense. His music expanded well beyond Savannah, thanks in large part to a daughter he never got to meet. Flauge Johnson moved to Atlanta when the girl was 8 because she was determined to pick up where her dad left off. She went to pursue hip-hop in the rap capital of the world. Turns out, she was pretty good at both basketball and rapping, doing more than her dad could have ever dreamed of. As far as the status of his unsolved homicide case, Camoflauge's assailants has yet to be identified for now. Rest in peace, Camoflauge.